Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Dynamics Corner. Brad, what is CPQ? What does the Q stand for? I'm your co-host, Chris.
And this is Brad. This episode was recorded on April 18th, 2025. Chris. What is a CPQ?
No clue.
Do you know how to spell it?
Yeah, CPQ. But I don't know what that means. Let's talk about it, though.
Well, many may not know what it means, but today we had the opportunity to learn all about CPQ and a great solution to help customers with their configuration, pricing, and quoting. With us today, we had the opportunity to speak with Miranda Powell from ExperLogix. Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Hello.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Get me. It's morning for you. I like I said to you the other day.
Oh, I'm going to throw you through a
No.
loop on this one.
Good evening.
It's morning.
evening.
But Brad likes to joke around about how I'm always in a different location every time we talk, and I'm calling in from sunny Mexico.
You're in
today.
Mexico? That's awesome.
Yeah, see.
Wow. So do we want to do this episode in Spanish?
No, that would be actually really embarrassing.
Well, it is.
For me.
It's every time I really don't know where you're from, but that's okay. We don't have to talk about that.
I'm from Florida. Like I'm a true Floridian, like a fourth generation Floridian. Unlike Brad on the call, but
You're the true Floridian person.
most of my friends, like are from the New York or New Jersey area, and their family had relocated to Florida. But yeah, been in Tampa pretty much all my life. I think when I got into being in my early 20s, I was offered a job up in Boston. And I kind of had the realization, I'm like, if I don't get out of here now, I could see myself staying in Florida for the rest of my life. And I'm so happy I took the job in Boston too, and got to experience the seasons. Everybody had told me, they're like, being a Florida girl, you're gonna hate Boston winters. Which Boston winter is fine because in theory that's just 3 months. It's spring that really hurts because that's just winter that overstays.
No, you
itself.
summed that up perfectly. But at least you had the opportunity to stay in the North End, which is an adventure in its own because of the food and the historic architecture. It was great to see you last week. Was it last week?
It's funny.
It was last week.
It's funny. I never put the name to the face because we played pong, table pong, or beer pong.
Yes.
The whole rest of the evening, and I'm like.
I actually did not put the name to the face either. That is crazy. Brad, we had a very intense game of beer pong during the party. It was really water pong. Nobody was drinking the beer cups or anything like that. But Rob from your team was playing too. It got very intense. We started wagering leads. We started throwing flags on the play with little white napkins.
I think you played 2 games. You were so good, and I remember just sitting with Gwen and I was like, we'll just ref it. That's it. That's what we're going to do.
So you guys had all this fun.
We did. It was so funny.
I was in bed every night by 9:30. It was sad. Even the last night I was in bed by, I think I stayed up a little bit late. I think I stayed up until 10.
Yeah, I mean, I slept for like 16 hours the day after I got back because I was exhausted. I feel like with all of us working from home now, being on your feet for 8 hours and then taking people out to dinner, it's especially draining. Because I'm used to my normal migration path being from my chair to the kitchen
you
to
use your leg
the living room
for the first time in a long time.
Yeah,
if I have to go somewhere by 2:00, I'm not using military time. I'm practicing.
2 p.m.
Yes, if 1400, I'll do it. I'll just go back to it. But if I go somewhere by 1400, I'm ready for bed. I'm like, how can people sit in an office all day and work all day? Because you summed it up perfectly. I think everyone has come to a certain pattern of activity and a certain pattern of normality, I guess you could say, or a habit. And what are you reading now?
I'm actually still reading Why We Sleep as my nonfiction book, and then I'm reading deep in the In the Garden of Deep Time, which is kind of like a modern rendition of The Secret
Nice.
Garden.
Interesting.
So I think we were talking about this in Vegas too. I like to do like an audio book for nonfiction at the same time that I'm reading like a fiction book. And usually I'll do like the audiobook for, you know, car rides, walks, even sometimes when I'm like working out. And then, you know, when I'm at home and trying to unplug and not, you know, have any, you know, audio or visual interference, I'm just usually reading
Why
a
We
book
Sleep
to go
is
to
a
bed.
great book. I think I told you, read Slow Productivity afterwards. That's a great book as well by Cal Newport. He's the one that wrote Deep Work. I'm reading Range now. I don't have the ability like you and many others to read 2 books simultaneously, so I can only read 1 book at a time. So I alternate
one
between
book at a
fiction
time
and,
for me
and
too.
nonfiction. I read Quit recently, and I had to quit it. The book told me to quit reading it because
So you quit.
I did
It proved
quit.
this point.
It really did, and I wonder if the author did that purposefully to see if people will really quit, because everything in the book talks about quitting and when you should quit and why you should quit. And as I was reading the book, I'm like, this book is repetitious. It's at the point where it's wasting my time. I need to quit. And I did quit. And now I'm reading Range. Range is another one of those books. I'm on chapter 7, and I understand repetition with books for reinforcing a point or reinforcing, but there is a point where it gets...
That's why I don't mind doing it on audio for the nonfiction books, because they tend to be so repetitive that it's like if I'm doing something else and I miss them saying it one time, I know they're going to regurgitate that same point at the end of the chapter a little bit later on. Whereas like reading the book, I feel like it can get a little bit redundant because you're so locked in. It's the one thing you're doing.
I'm
It's
opposite
like
for that, because like I when I'm reading a nonfiction book, I like to reference. So I usually highlight a few things to reference later. But fictional books, I would rather do audible, because then I can just sit there and listen and imagine, what they're saying and such. So I'm the opposite of that.
But what if they like say a name wrong or something? Like I did one time, I jumped into an audiobook at like the second or third book in a series. And when I was hearing them say like the character's name or even the accent that somebody was like talking, I was like, this is not how I imagined the book to be. And that's not how I was pronouncing the name. And it was kind of tearing it all down for me. But I think if you start a fiction book from scratch, then that's
I like the Kindle
a little
for
bit
the
easier.
highlighting. And my next, what's on deck for me is Red Rising. So that's your recommendation. So I will let you know how that...
Next, I think you and my boyfriend have similar tastes in books based on like the 3-body problem and Silo and kind of the dystopian, sci-fi type of genre. And he chewed through those books pretty quickly. He's on the Mistborn series right now.
I'll have to put all these on the list for my fiction books and see.
Yeah.
I have a few other, like I had mentioned to you, if it's a series like Silo, I read the 3 books, then I went back to nonfiction. When I get to Red Rising, if the first book is really good, I'll finish those books and then I'll go back to nonfiction. So we'll see where we are.
I'm boring. I'm reading Psych right now from Paul Bloom. It's like basic psychology. It's a great book so far. I guess is one of the famous psychiatrists at Harvard or something like that.
You going to stop playing mind games?
No, I think it helps me kind of take a pause for a second, because everybody has a different way. Everybody has different ways of approaching things, and their response can also be driven by emotions and such. So I try not to take it personally for those that are maybe upset. You know what I mean? It's a good reminder.
Great advice. Perspective is everything, and where something comes from is important. But we did not come today or meet today or talk today. I don't know. See, Chris, Fridays, we have to stop the Fridays. I keep saying that. It always throws me off.
Nobody knows it's Friday. It's not Friday. It's Saturday.
But my body knows it's Friday. So I always get into this tongue-tied bad joke day. Before we jump into talking a little bit about what we wanted to speak about, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So Miranda Powell, I work for a company called ExperLogix, and I'm currently the director of strategic partnerships. I've actually been at the company for about 3 years. While I'm new in the role and kind of new to the channel, I've been running our marketing program. And before that, I was actually working for ExperLogix as an agency partner. So they were using my marketing agency. And it was at that point they flew me down to their sales kickoff meeting in 2021. I presented to the whole team, and it went really good in terms of, what channels we're not executing on, the message for the market, the best fit kind of like, audiences, so on and so forth. And I was approached by the CEO afterwards, and he's like, hey, like, that was really great. Is there a chance that you would come and do that, like, at ExperLogix, or like work at, within the inside of the company? And at the time, I wasn't really in a position where I was wanting to leave the agency, but we kind of kept the door open and talked for, about 11 months or so. And then at the end of that year, I ended up switching over and kind of coming on to ExperLogix full time, because that was really my first, internal only marketing role. I'd always sold marketing software and marketing services. So I'd always had, customer interactions, partner interactions, so on and so forth. So while I loved the work that I did in marketing at ExperLogix, I did miss connecting with people. I love presenting. If you guys can tell, I love talking. So that part was hard. And so I went to our VP of sales, who's always kind of been in my ear saying, like, Miranda, you're a salesperson. Like, what are you doing in marketing? Our solution set somewhat complex. And I was like, look, I'm not trying to have a 7 or 8 month ramp up to be productive at a company that I've been at, for 3+ years at this point. And so we started talking about the opportunity to do partnerships. And I was a little intimidated because I don't come from, the channel. And I thought that was kind of going to be my, biggest weakness. Now that I've been in the role for about 4.5 months or so, I actually feel like it's one of my better strengths. Like, I don't know how things have been done historically. I feel like I'm looking at stuff with a fresh set of eyes. And one of the biggest things that's been, like an eye opener to me is like, why are we not doing more for our partners? Right? Like, I think that sales has historically owned our partner relationships, and they come in very one-track minded, right? It's like, what do you guys have for me? Not like, how can we generate leads together? How can we go after, a certain segment? Or, on the other end, ExperLogix is unique in the ISV space, and the fact that we've been, in the channel for over 20 years. So we have a lot of customers that are on NAV or AX or Great Plains. Eventually, they're going to need to migrate, and that's probably the leads or opportunities that our partners are most interested in. So how do we do a better job of kind of recycling our on-prem customers, our leads that come into us without a partner from a direct perspective? Like, historically in marketing, we were disqualifying, a lead that would recognize they need CPQ, but they don't yet have an ERP or a CRM. And I was like, okay, bye. Instead of, hey, here's BC partner. It's a great ERP for you guys to get started on as a manufacturer that's trying to grow your tech stack. So I'm trying to bridge the gap a little bit more between our partner channel, our direct channel, and then some of our existing, legacy customers, so that it's more of a, symbiotic relationship.
You hit on
across
a
the
key
channel.
point
That's
there,
perfect.
and I like that. You're talking about the relationship, because
Yeah.
I'll use it for the reference of the conversation. The old way of doing things seems to not be working, and I was thankful, and I picked up on it a lot last week when we were at the conference. A lot of people are realizing that businesses need the partnerships and have that relationship to work with each other, to bring each other along through the journey. As you had mentioned, you
Right.
may have a product with ExperLogix, which I'd love to hear more about. And then if you're working with a partner for Business Central, you may have like customers that you can work together to help the customer become successful. Because at the end, that's what's the most important, is for this customer to be successful with whatever they use, and whether it be Business Central, whether it be ExperLogix, or any other product. And if the customer is successful, then everyone's successful, and other customers will be happy to use the product as well. So I like that approach.
Exactly. And I feel like a lot of these conversations too, like, I am really trying to make it more about the partner and understanding their niche and where they add the most value. Because then, at the end of the day, this is all about getting the customer in contact with somebody who has the most experience in their industry and their challenges. Manufacturing is broad, but I've been talking to some partners who are like, if it's a metals manufacturer that's looking to go on BC, like, that is our space, or like furniture manufacturing. And so trying to define or carve out these little, niche segments for each partner. So, there's no overlap essentially. And then again, it's in the customer's best interest because I'm like, hey, I'm going to introduce you to this partner. They're highly experienced in metals manufacturing and helped a lot of customers like you take the first step in their digital
I like that.
transformation
There was a
journey.
session last year, and they did the same thing this year as well about what can ISVs do for VARs and VARs vice versa. Last year I was in a panel,
Yeah.
and that was a perfect conversation where we have to help each other, right? Like if they're making
Right.
it so easy for clients of Business Central to look up a product and app source and just sign up, and may not involve their partner, and so it can create
Yeah.
I don't know, like a distrust in some way where now you're implementing something that a partner's not aware. So I love your approach where, hey, let's connect you with a partner to make sure that this is a right fit for your industry. And that's perfect. And I think we all need to support each other in that sense. So I appreciate you calling that out, because that is that relationship, right? We need that built right at the get-go.
In 2025, that's the one thing that you cannot forget. So you've been with ExperLogix. Can you tell us a little, what is ExperLogix? And
Yeah. So again, we've been in the space for over 20 years, and our backbone and our roots are really in CPQ. So the joke at the company is, we've been doing CPQ since before it was a 3-letter acronym. The company was established back in 1995. I think our first integration went live with CRM 4.0 back in 2004. And so helping people, configure highly complex products, right? Like in the 21st century, that's been an increasing need from, especially manufacturers, is being able to offer custom built solutions for their clients. But the downside of that has always been, the work that's involved or the risk that it takes. Like, how do you know if you make this customization or you swap out, a transmission, that it's going to work with the engine that you have for a certain truck that you're building? So ExperLogix really safeguards and foolproofs the configuration in the sales process, so that sales isn't selling something that manufacturing at the end of the day can't produce. And while, I think we got our, start in manufacturing, we have so many other use cases too. So we work with a lot of professional services companies, field services companies, anybody really where the product or service catalog is pretty complex. We can add a lot more structure to that. It helps, new sales reps get ramped up or become proficient at selling just as much as their most seasoned or tenured sales reps. There's even stuff where, I'm going to go back to the example of the truck. If you add on a sleeper cabin, it's going to have a pop-up within the configurator say, hey, they bought the sleeper cabin. Why don't you ask them if they're interested in a mini fridge and a mattress to go along with it? So there's upsell prompts, there's rules that will fire, if there's certain components of the configuration that don't work together. There's automated like discount and engineering requests that you're able to put in through the solution. And then, that's kind of talking more about the quote generation. We also push the quote to order. It generates the bill of materials. It generates all the routings. You could even go and do a change order in BC after you'd started the configuration in CE, for example. So it helps across the board, like for manufacturing companies in particular. Like we were talking to a partner last week, and they had come to us. They're like, look, we're really trying to build a business case around CPQ, but the customer is very cost sensitive. Like how do we, get them in there, because I know that they need this. And our sales rep had asked the partner, it's like, hey, how much money are they losing due to manufacturing errors at the end of their process based on something that was sold that couldn't really be configured? And the partner wasn't sure. He's like, let me go and, ask the customer that. Came back and he said they're losing $500,000 a year. And so it's just like an immediate business case in some of those instances, on top of, accelerating sales processes, increasing the average order value of those deals, and again, reducing and eliminating any of the errors that might come with building a highly complex or configurable product. So that's our backbone. And until 2019, we were really exclusively CPQ. Then we started growing through a series of acquisitions. first one being document automation, which in some cases is kind of the queue in CPQ. So it can take that quote or the different line items, and it uses dynamic imagery and dynamic text based on what the customer has purchased to pull in the terms and conditions, or if they bought that sleeper cabin, it'll show a picture of the sleeper cabin and kind of give it a little bit of description in terms of, the layout, what's included, so on and so forth. But document automation also has a lot of use cases where it can stand on its own. So think of like anything that's highly regulated or very document heavy. Like we're working with the whole US court system. We signed Wells Fargo towards the end of last year as well. So banking, insurance, government are all good document automation fits that don't necessarily need a configurator. And then the last acquisition that we made was a company based over in Ireland that was in the e-commerce space. So now we have the ability to have B2B e-commerce, dealer portals, customer portals. And what's going to be really exciting and is on the roadmap either at the end of this year or early next year is when CPQ and digital commerce are actually integrated and you're able to give the customer the ability to build a highly configurable product from scratch without any risk of, it not being something that could be manufactured, right?
That's a lot. So CPQ, let's go back to...
It's a lot. So to tie a nice bow around that too, ExperLogix makes it easier for your customers to buy from you. So whether that's CPQ, document automation, or digital commerce, streamline the sales and quoting process and enable self-service purchasing channels.
Love that finish. Chris, did you hear that?
Yep.
Makes customers easier to buy from you. And that's the ultimate.
Make it easy.
All that in there. So that CPQ, what does CPQ stand for?
Configure, price, quote. So there's the product configuration component, pricing, so highly complex or dynamic pricing, or even if dealers have special discounted pricing, that can all be warehoused within CPQ. And then quote, which is, the ability to produce a very impressive, again, like pulling in dynamic imagery, having these like longer forms of text where it's really describing what the customer is purchasing. And I love to talk about the queue within CPQ and like how that differentiates in a sales process too, because we all know that the person that's going through the sales process isn't always your decision maker, right? They're a champion and now they have to go and sell internally. So if they have two proposals or two quotes that are essentially just, tables that have been exported from Business Central, and then they have another quote on the table that has, all this information, description, pictures, who's going to be, in the best case to win that deal? Who's enabling their champion the best in order to win, right? So it's all about enabling your champion, giving them that information. And I won't go too far into the nitty gritty with it, but I do get excited.
I'm getting excited about it as well. So with ExperLogix and CPQ, just to take back all the great information that you had mentioned, it allows you to quote and sell to a customer safely. So if you have lots of products or you have a large product catalog, it makes it easier for whomever is going to be putting together or working with a customer to ensure that what they have together works well together and you can put it together safely, but also may introduce other benefits that they can get from other products based upon what they're buying. And then it can come up with the pricing for that as well.
Exactly.
I like the example.
It definitely increases like the adoption, of CRM and ERP. All of that information will write back over to either CE, Business Central, or F&O so that they have better forecasting from a sales perspective. You can pull Power BI reports that aren't just specific to the opportunity, but it's like, hey, what was the product that's, most often quoted within this, time period? So it allows you to get a little bit more granular in terms of the specific components that are sold more frequently, allows for better inventory planning, allows for better sales forecasting. It benefits the other technologies that it integrates with. And we're never a standalone solution either. So all three of our products require a CRM or ERP, which is again why the partner channel is so important for us. We're not making any sales without that technology in place.
So with the CPQ for ExperLogix CPQ with Business Central, you can work with a customer, create an order for a customer, create a quote for a customer based upon the configuration that they want for a particular product. And it will send the production order and the order back over to Business Central so that you have that same information that you then can process and create the order and send back out to the customer through Business Central. Okay, excellent. with Business Central, with ExperLogix, which versions of Business Central, CE, and F&O do you work with? Do you go back to Dynamics Nav? Do you work with Business Central Online, Business Central
So
on premises?
today we're just doing the on cloud solution. So today it's just Business Central Online, F&O Online, CE Online. But again, we do have a lot of legacy customers today that are still on on-premise CRM or on Nav or on AX or on Great Plains. So it's integrations that we have supported in the past, but in order for them to really take advantage of ExperLogix's newest features and rollout, so on and so forth, they need to be on a cloud, ERP or
Modern.
CRM, which is why those on-premise, customers could be interesting, not only for us getting a stronger relationship with partners, but we're in the midst of rolling out like our AI-enabled CPQ solution, and none of our on-premise customers are going to be able to take advantage of that or really, benefit kind of from the stickiness of it. So working with partners to migrate them over, not so just their, tech stack is a little bit more future-proofed, but also so that they can take advantage of, the newest rollouts that CPQ is doing as well.
Even though they're in BC on-prem, they won't be able to take advantage of that. They have to be BC online.
So you're rolling out a new, I heard the AI feature. I understand that, and I'm going to assume then that ExperLogix is also a cloud-based application. Okay. You're going to roll out, or you're rolling out an AI feature with CPQ. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so right now a little bit more of the cumbersome part of CPQ is going to be the modeling and setting up of the rules or the products, so on and so forth. So the first integration is going to include GPTs within the actual modeler or admin system, where it's like, hey, could you write me a rule, that would prevent somebody from selling X with Y? And they will generate that for you. And that's usually done in Excel syntax. It's not coded or anything. We are a low code, no code solution. So that's a differentiator for us versus a lot of the other CPQ solutions that are in the space. And it was funny because when we were out at Directions, first day keynote, Microsoft is up there talking and they're like, let us roll out. We're going to show you guys our sales order agent that we've created. And so it was funny because I had two partners sitting on either side of me during this presentation. They both nudged me and they're like, Miranda, is this going to get rid of CPQ? And the answer is no, or at least not today, or not in the way that people would be thinking. The sales order agent and the demo that they did is for pre-configured products, right? So if you sell like software, you sell something off the shelf, sure, you could have a GPT or Copilot create a quote for you, on some of those line items. But if you think about like building a truck or building an assembly line or a commercial stove from scratch for like a certain, restaurant or, like larger kitchen environment, the amount that you would have to type to Copilot to get every single product, the specifications, the measurements, so on and so forth, into the configurator, into a quote, you're going to be better off still with just a few clicks within CPQ to get the same output. Now, that being said, the week before Directions, we actually had a call with Microsoft about integrating our CPQ into the sales order agent so that they can leverage the rules, the logic, so on and so forth for those highly configurable products. So that's another thing that we have underway right now is we're really trying to lead the motion from a configurator perspective with Microsoft and embedding our CPQ into the sales order agent.
I could see where AI would help with on either side. If you're doing a self-service order creation from a customer via portal, to have an agent help guide you through building your order or configuring your order for pricing and quoting, or even if you have a salesperson or a representative from your organization that's working with somebody who may not be fully versed in all of your product line, if it's that vast, to be able to have something to put up guardrails to make sure that what you're going to put together for a customer works together. I could see that with a lot of industries, with medical kits, as you had mentioned, if you're building custom configurations for products for specific industries, restaurants, trucks, vehicles, campers. I could name a lot of industries that I could see where this becomes helpful.
Yeah. And like field service is a big one. I'm actually going out to a conference next week in Palm Springs. And it's not a use case people think of as much as manufacturing, but their quotes are highly complex as well because of the difference in margin from like the hardware or products that they're going to be selling, and then the labor, and then like, any additional like maintenance costs, and being able to do that in one, fell swoop from a quoting perspective. And then at the bottom too, you're able to kind of track like as a salesperson, what are your commissions, what is the margin, making sure you're not discounting anything a little bit too heavily, swapping out any of the resources, that might be too expensive and driving the cost up past the customer's budget. So yeah, a lot of manufacturing's a big one, but there is a lot of other use cases. And again, it's more about the complexity of the sale. I always like the examples where it is, we have a security company, for example, and they need to provide hardware camera equipment based on the size of the building. So that's kind of done within CPQ, but then they also sell software subscription to do kind of the virtual monitoring, and then they sell maintenance on those services. And so they're able, again, to kind of build a quote or an opportunity with different types of solutions or services that they're offering, and really be able to calculate the margin on the overall deal and make sure that they're staying within kind of the business targets from that
Super
regard.
flexible, sounds like.
I
Yes.
like that. I was just thinking about that. I was thinking about the security system, because what they do when they put that together, like you talk
I
about the
know.
cameras, the pieces of hardware, and then the software, and then the monitoring service that goes with it. See, I'm learning a lot
Yeah.
from this in the CPQ.
And we have quite a few partners that use CPQ too, because I'm sure y'all's quoting process for like an ERP implementation is fairly complex. I feel like as a salesperson, that's always the thing that I dread the most having to do. I'm so comfortable talking to everybody when it comes
Putting it
time
to
to like put numbers to paper. Yeah, like I'm calling a few different people, making sure that everything looks right, so on and so forth. And again, even from the discounting perspective, like if I were a salesperson and I put in a 20% discount, and let's say like I'm able to discount only up to 10%, that would immediately flag that over to my VP of sales, say, hey, there's a discount request on this quote before it can be, finalized and sent to the customer. And those can push like to teams is actually the way that we have it set up internally. So my VP of sales gets a team message instantaneously saying, hey, Miranda's looking for a 20% discount on this quote. Here's her reason that she wants this discount,
So
approve or
there's an
deny.
approval workflow that occurs with the whole process, but it doesn't have to be complicated, right? It doesn't have to.
It doesn't have
But you're
to,
forced.
but that's kind of more of
Yes.
our wheelhouse, honestly, is the more complex product configurations. Because again, like, something that's a little bit more simple or pre-configured, you can probably use an AI agent. You can probably use a little bit, a less expensive tool than what CPQ is. But if product configuration and if you're leaving money on the table either due to lost or due to manufacturing errors or not hitting on upsell opportunities, so on and so forth, because of how broad your product or services, catalog is, that's going to be a good fit for CPQ. So we do tend to, have some of the more complicated industries, semiconductors being a big one, like that one's really, really nuanced and complicated, but that's been an area that we're able to shine, and partners will even come to us and say like, going to warn you, this is really complex and they're doing this through spreadsheets today and so on and so forth. But yeah, that ends up being more of our bread and butter for the most part.
So do your product then provide some analytics as well when you are kind of going through that? Like if
Yeah.
you lost an opportunity or lost a sale because of this, is that something that's built in or something that you can attach like Power BI into?
So the quote will be associated with the opportunity, and typically people are putting the lost reason on the opportunity itself and kind of logging that more manually. I think we would get to a point with co-pilots and whatnot where, based on an email exchange, they're able to pick up what the lost reason is and populate that into the opportunity itself. But again, we exist more on like the quote and order level versus like, the reason that we lost the deal or the opportunity level, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
That makes sense. That would be
makes
in
sense.
the host system, I'll call it, for lack of better terms, or the primary system being your CRM or your ERP software, which we hope is Business Central. And it's nice. The product configurator can work with complex models, but it doesn't have to be complicated to use. See, that's the key. Is I like the ease of use
that's
to allow you to guide through it. So.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll have to get you guys into a demo sometime soon so that you can kind of see, because we have like what's called a guided selling module, and like you'll see it'll take you kind of like step by step, because there's like a set of like key discovery questions, right, that would kind of help you narrow down what you would be selling to a customer. So going back to a truck example, you could say, hey, I'm based in, North America. I need something that has like a high degree of fuel efficiency and it's going to be traveling like long distances. And then it's going to narrow your truck list down from, 50 models to just 6. And then you can compare there's additional questions that you can ask to whittle that list down a little bit further. But yeah, it
That's like
really,
sustainability component too. I mean,
yeah,
there's a new module in Business Central for sustainability, so that would be pretty impressive. And we can even have that conversation on this future podcast where you can just showcase how it all works. I
yeah,
mean, I'm down for that. Any opportunity for me to learn,
yeah, absolutely.
even for
No, I
myself.
like it. I think it's always of some benefit to take a look at the products that are available to assist customers with their implementations of their ERP software or their CRM, CE type software, which as well goes well too.
And it's an interesting like time right now, especially in the Microsoft channel for CPQ, because every other, and I'm trying to educate a lot of partners on this today, is every other ERP or CRM has acquired their own CPQ solution. So SAP has a CPQ, Infor, Epicor, Salesforce, Oracle, ServiceNow even just acquired Logic.io, which is another CPQ company. So I think maybe there's some really small niche CRMs that don't have CPQ, but Microsoft is really one of the only ones where they do not have a CPQ module that they're selling. And so I've been talking a lot about with partners and really focusing on discovery. And I'm like, I don't expect any partner to go in with 10 questions specific to CPQ when they're getting into a sales process. But I created this one pager that's called Cues for CPQ. It's just things to listen for as you're going through your discovery process. Because if you're selling against, Epicor, or you're selling against NetSuite, their sales team is going to try to sell their CPQ. They're more trained on listening for those pain points and challenges. And my experience with a lot of partners is unless somebody is directly asking for CPQ, it's usually not included as a part of the quote. And then they're getting into this reactive phase, a little bit later on when they find out that NetSuite has, included CPQ, and the prospect is saying NetSuite said I need this as a manufacturer. Why did you guys not include anything? And so they're having to come back and say hey, we actually need to find an ISV, here's a little bit of information, can you guys join the call next week? So enabling better discovery, one, allows us to really aid you guys in the sales process as quickly as possible. But then two, the downside, or what we always hear from partners in the Microsoft channel is, why do you always have to bring in so many ISVs when you're doing a Microsoft ERP sale, versus an SAP or an Oracle, right? And the quicker that we're brought in, we don't have to be ExperLogix CPQ. We can be Microsoft CPQ solution. We'll let you guys guide the sales process the entire time. But yeah, it's this interesting kind of competitive landscape right now where every other ERP or CRM that partners are selling against have their own CPQ solution. And how do we bridge that gap so that you guys know the things to listen for that would indicate that they need a CPQ, other than them just saying directly we need a quoting solution.
This right
is a
here
struggle. That's a
my mind
struggle
is
right
just
there.
going listening to you, because it does all go back to relationships. It also goes back to those working with implementation of applications to be able to understand. And it's been my latest. I took it away mostly from the conference with talking with individuals, of being able to apply the solutions. You can understand the functionality. You can understand that something was added, but now it's in the conversation with somebody. How do you know to apply which and when? And the same thing, it's more now of, it's not just Business Central that you're offering the customer solution to solve a problem. I think a lot of times that gets lost, that it's not that you're buying Business Central, you have to use Business Central and everything has to be in Business Central. As long as the customer can sit down and they can do what they need to do to sell to their customers easily,
right,
then I think it works. And I think to your point, it's a matter of how it's presented and which pieces are there. And even like you said, it's you bring it in as, this is the solution that I'm providing to you. These are all the pieces that we're putting together, and this is what it may cost you with that.
Yeah, none of us are here to sell products, right? Do we say we sell Microsoft products? No, we sell solutions that are tailored to the customer's needs. We're not order takers in the digital transformation
and that's
or
what gets
ERP
lost,
space,
is
right?
you're selling a service, and the tool that you use for the service or the solution is CE, FNO, FNX, FNAX, whatever they call it this week, Business Central.
I think that's our biggest weakness right now, because if you look at NetSuite and how they sell products, they don't ever call out a specific add-on or anything. They sell it as a full solution. So they have a really wonderful sales team when they do a presentation, and at the end of it, then they'll break it down. But like that's something that partners struggle all the time. It's like they they try to do a discovery and then maybe pull in different meetings of different ISVs add-ons. And I think we do need to switch it up a little bit where before you do a demo and present, you have to do a full discovery and then bring on those ISV, but don't like you have to sell it as a full picture,
Right.
right? Because NetSuite does a wonderful job on that, and I think we're getting better. At least certain partners are getting better, but that's always been a struggle. I mean, being part of a sales engineer, having that conversation, doing a demo, it's like, oh well, we'll have to show that to you later because I'm still trying to figure out which add-ons or ISV that I'm going to bring into
Right.
the next conversation, and maybe we need to stop doing that. We just have to get everything prepared and then do a full demo and then do a whole kind of a gamut of the picture of the entire implementation would look like, and then worry about the hey, these were the ISVs that could accomplish
It's
that for
you hit the nail on the head. That is right
know.
there, Chris. Is what needs to be done. It's look at how you work with your day. You mentioned NetSuite. It's even home products. Somebody wants to offer me an alarm system. They want to offer me a sprinkler system. I don't care where they're getting the pieces from. I just want to make sure that I
Right.
can do what I need to do to solve my problem.
Yep.
Speaking of that, when it comes to the implementation of ExperLogix, what is the implementation process like? And specifically, is it partner-led? Do you lead it? Do you share it with the partner? What's your involvement? What's the partner's involvement?
So
the
historically, we have done majority of the implementations ourselves. Again, the product is fairly complex. But at the same time, as I've come into this role, I know that the software revenue isn't super interesting for our partners, right? Like they want to be able to do the services revenue because sometimes in an ExperLogix implementation, like the software costs and the services costs, it's like a 1-to-1, sometimes even a 2-to-1 in favor of like the services, revenue or expenses that they're going to be putting into building ExperLogix. Usually been done through our team. What I've recently rolled out is 3 different levels of service for our partners and like different trainings because we do have a centralized training department. We're usually training our customers on how to be able to model their own after we do the initial implementation for them. So the first tier will be a sales plus partner. So just getting you guys to a point where you're comfortable, positioning ExperLogix, qualifying a customer. And the training for that is really just about 2 hours. And at the end of it, we would install ExperLogix within your demo environment so that when you are, going into those conversations about Business Central, it's completely like white labeled. They don't have to see it's ExperLogix. It's already in there. The next would be a Project Plus partner, and that typically would require, a assigned customer that you guys would kind of ride alongside their training, and we would be able to give over some of the project management hours to you guys. We start doing a couple of more in-depth trainings, so our CPQ fundamentals, which is about 20 hours or about 1 week of 4-hour classes. It can be broken up farther, to make whatever easier for our partners as well. And then there's a Practice Plus partner, which is usually going to require having a dedicated CPQ, team or assets who would be responsible for any of the modeling and whatnot, and could do full service implementation. So we are trying to create those pathways because, historically we've done these implementations ourselves, but we know that in order to really go to the next level with a lot of our partners and make things more interesting for them from a sales perspective, they're wanting to do the implementations themselves. So we are working with a handful of partners on kind of getting them to that Practice Plus tier. Right now, I think the farthest that any partner has made it to today is around that Project Plus, where we're sharing hours, or they're managing the product, or they're doing some of the initial or some of the following modeling after we've done the initial
It's a good
implementation.
approach because you know the product well. The partner knows their product well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of products out there, a lot of solutions. It is very difficult to know it all. From the customer perspective, here it is, Friday. From the customer perspective, what is the typical journey for a customer? I know you can say how long is a typical implementation, but that's like saying how long is a piece of string, because every customer will vary in size and complexity. But what's the typical implementation process like that a customer would go through to get set up with CPQ and ExperLogix?
Yeah, so we would initially do like a discovery or a solutioning phase, which is going to run the course of about like 1 to 2 months. Then we'll start building out some of the initial product sets for them. And that will usually take about another, 2 to 4 months. And then from there, it's really up to them if they want us to continue with the implementation, or after we've kind of built out like a base set of products, if they feel like they have enough to kind of run with and build out additional products. And then after the products are built, it's more of a conversation of like, the rules and what works with, which components work with each, building in some of that like cross-sell logic, so on and so forth. So typically from an implementation perspective, anywhere from like 4 months to, 10 months. And a lot of the time we are working alongside a partner, who's implementing ERP. So there's also, dependencies from, how quick the ERP implementation is moving in order to get CPQ, up and running as well.
So there's a parallel implementation along with the
Yeah.
BC implementation. Okay.
And a lot of times people will try to push us to, more of a phase 2, but it's really like our best implementations are when we're working alongside the partner as they're doing the ERP implementation, or able to stand both of these up at the same time versus getting ERP live and then, 10 months later,
Yeah,
they're
that
finally
makes
able
more
to start
sense.
quoting within
It's the
CPQ.
solution.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
That
Yeah.
you're offering
Yeah.
the customer. It's not, you don't want to be half running when you first start. You want to be able to
Yeah.
work with your customers.
And then change the
Yes.
process again,
Yeah.
on the second phase where you can just do it. And of course, there's a lot of setup on the items too, right? And,
Yeah.
and not only that, it's a brand new ERP. So process is brand new. And then they get used to it. And all of a sudden there's phase 2. And it's like, oh, just forget what you just learned. Now you got to do everything in
Yeah.
ExperLogix.
And it's beneficial from a partner too, because my whole presentation that I gave out at Directions, I focused on the manufacturing space, and I was kind of like, look, like we've had what now, 5 industrial revolutions in manufacturing. If you look at manufacturing process, 50, 75 years ago, it looked wildly different than it does today, especially with like IoT and AI starting to be a little bit more a part of the product configuration process. But if you look at the sales process within manufacturing companies, dating back like 50 years, it doesn't look that different. People are still calling in and placing orders. Most of the manufacturers, and we've worked with a good amount of like the Fortune, 1000, they'll come to us with this monster spreadsheet where they have all of their pricing, all of their products, so on and so
Gross.
forth. Yeah, and like one person maintains it. We actually talked to somebody yesterday, and they have a 400 cell by 400 cell spreadsheet. So it's like 160,000 cells, and if one thing breaks, there's only one person who has to go back in and update all the formula. So, it's bad from, one, people aren't actually using the CRM for their sales process. The CRM or ERP, it just becomes like an interface at that point. But most of the calculations, most of the product configuration is being done elsewhere. So how do we bring that in, to their core technology so that they're actually doing the sale, they're actually doing the quote, they're on the phone with the customer, asking these questions, filling it out in the configurator, and having it all right back to CRM and ERP. My whole thing was like, how do we start the sales revolution?
That needs
for
to occur.
manufacturing, because
Yeah.
it's not
They'll
that.
white knuckle that
Those
whole thing, man. They'll
Yeah.
white
spreadsheets are
knuckle
so
that whole
dangerous
stuff.
because, as you had mentioned, the risks that an organization has. The spreadsheet
Yeah.
can go away with knowledge of a person that may move to a different
Tribal
location.
knowledge
Nobody
is huge.
understands it. Very difficult to scale because now you have one person that has a spreadsheet that's working with something, and you don't have the visibility as to what's going on. As you'd mentioned, the ERP software then becomes almost like a notebook or a tool to record things after the fact. So
Exactly.
you really are always looking behind versus the current into the future to be able to plan and go through. And it's a lot of times those spreadsheets get used. You have some resistance to change that because you always hear, well, you can't do that. We do have something so complicated. I can't tell you how many times I heard that. It's so complicated.
Exactly.
There's no
Everybody's a
system.
special
It's
little
unique.
snowflake when they're in a sales
Yes,
process.
with that, I worked with an organization and they were manufacturing stuff, and they had mentioned the same thing as, oh, you can't do this. We need a lot of modifications. We can't do this with the manufacturing with an ERP software because we have this special thing. And they got mad at me, but I kind of said, you're pretty much just making a calculator. You're making a calculator, you're making another product. It's the same thing as you have a finished product, you have a bill of material process, you go through a routing. Just because you have different types of material that may be more valuable or something, and you need to track it. You still can track it within a system, but sometimes they just hold on to this thinking that nobody can do something that they don't have. And that it is a world that needs to change.
That's something they should consider then, like preparation wise, before going into an ERP implementation or even ExperLogix implementation, is look around you and see who's using Excel to go do, you know, day-to-day work.
Yeah.
And you may want to start documenting that, because you don't want to figure that out right in the middle of everything.
With those spreadsheets, we have like a term, and we even have like a little jiffy that we have built out internally at ExperLogix. So we call them Frankensheets, because they will usually have so many tabs and so many cells that they start to take on a life of their own. You know, like that's what we will call a Frankensheet. And people will sometimes be embarrassed before sending it over to us. Like they're like, oh, like it's really in depth, it's really bad. It's like, we have seen every type of crazy spreadsheet at this point to warehouse product and pricing information to where that doesn't intimidate us. And we actually specifically built our modeler on Excel syntax to make it that much easier for people who are moving from a spreadsheet and those types of rules and formulas over into CPQ.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're not bashing anyone using Excel.
No,
Excel, great product, right?
Yeah,
useful, but don't use it as your
Excel
ERP.
is a great tool.
because
It's not bashing in a sense. It's just with the understanding that you may have used Excel for a reason due to a limitation in your existing system. Just because you're using Excel doesn't mean that no other system can do it, because technology has advanced. Individuals have worked through these processes and realized you can do it systemically versus in Excel. It's a matter of taking a step back and saying, okay, I have trust in another system, just like I had to have trust in my Excel sheet when it first started. This is you're reading the psych book, but the psychology behind it is when they first started using that Excel spreadsheet, it was still new and foreign, and they had to build trust with it that it was calculating properly. And then they've learned to trust it and they're holding on to it. Now, when they jump into a newer ERP system with a new product configurator or CPQ, configuring, pricing, quoting. See, I got that. I learned something new.
Yeah. You did.
That.
See, I like the term that I've started using in some conversations. I don't know if it's landing as well as I want to, because I do feel like it's more of a new age concept, is this idea of technology blindness. So people will talk about, oh, like we all had eyebrow blindness, you know, from like the 90s into the early 2000s. Like my eyebrows still haven't fully recovered from when they were so paper thin, because that was the thing, right? That's what we did. That was the trend, you know, but we couldn't see how ugly it was, because like everybody was doing it. It was the status quo.
Painting them on.
You know, like now the thick eyebrows are back in, and like whatever.
Tattooed.
But yeah, or even like to give it more of a, you know, male frame of reference, you know, there's hair blindness and people who are trying to like hold on to like the one patch of hair that's there instead of just shaving it off. And I don't know what Brad has under his hat, so I'm not calling him out in any regard. But my whole all the men in my family are bald. They
my
just
head
shave
has
the
been
head
shaved since I was. It's funny because I have been shaving my head since I was probably 19, 18. And it is funny because I had always shaved it. I had a high and tight, and then I started getting a little thin, and then I was like, oh, I'll just shave it. To the point where I really didn't even know how much hair I had. And then there was a point a few years ago, I'm like, you know what? I'll grow it out just to see what it looks like. So now I just keep it a little bit shorter, just because it's easier. But I still like to be bald. I'm not holding on to any piece. I don't have the comb over. I don't have.
No, my dad's been bald since he was 23. Like baldness is like a thing in my family. But it's funny because my dad, compared to like some of his friends who are still holding on to, I feel like he looks so much younger. You know, like whereas
just shave it.
Chris, that's why I look so young.
But it's like, you know,
don't be Homer
there's
Simpson.
a trend, there's a level of comfort, you know, in the things that we've always done or the things that we've always had. And I think that like applies to, you know, technology too. Like I'm comfortable with my spreadsheet. I'm comfortable with like my thin eye. Like they might be ugly, they might not be in style anymore, but it's what I know and what I'm used to. Still, I feel like I need to fine tune the technology blindness thing. But that was a
change is scary for me.
I love the eyebrow reference. I really had a conversation with someone the other day about that, and they were talking about the eyebrows because when they were younger, it's the same things that you would pull it all out, and I guess it doesn't. Eyebrows don't grow back. I thought they did.
It kind of like I have pretty like naturally thick eyebrows, but I'm a little bit spotty compared to like because of how intensely I would pluck them during like the
Oh, the
early
next time I see you, you know I'm
like,
going
it
to be
was
staring at
just
your eyebrows. I'll
super-
take a magnifying glass and I'll be like,
Well, don't do that because I actually just have one eyebrow. I just wax it really well so that it's
Hey, at least you didn't tattoo it, because my
Exactly.
grandmother tattooed hers, and I think my mom has her tattoo, but I don't really pay attention. But it was a thing back then, right? Like,
Yeah.
just tattoo it.
Yeah, or shave
Permanent.
it completely off. My grandma still pencils, just draws on her eyebrows every day. And what she told me, she was going, because she leads the women's church group at one of the local prisons, and she showed up one day. She'd used her lip liner and got ready in the dark instead of her eyebrow pen, so she showed up with red little thin eyebrows, and everybody was like,
that is
"Marilyn,
funny. That's I see some.
you
Yeah,
look
I don't want to
crazy."
talk about that. I don't want anyone to be insulted by our talking about them painting their eyebrows on, but
But again, it's more about, it's a trend. We all get like caught up in it, and then it's hard to like let
absolutely,
go of
it's
because
comfort. You don't
we're
let go of your
comfortable
comfort
with
level,
it.
which is good.
Yeah.
So
You don't let go of your spreadsheet. Yeah.
the one thing from a technical point of view, how is the information? What I was thinking about as we were talking, the information exchanged between Business Central and the ExperLogix CPQ is Business Central. How does the information communicate back and forth? How much of the information lives in Business Central versus how much lives in ExperLogix? So if you set up your products, for example, do you set up your products in Business Central and then they move over to ExperLogix, or do you set the products up in ExperLogix and then you manage them over there and they move back into Business Central, for example?
Yeah. So usually you're setting up the products with, it's a bidirectional sync. So we have an integration framework that's honestly our differentiator. And this used to bother me when I was in marketing, because other CPQs, they have rule-based functionality, they have 3D product visualization. And so I remember going back to our head of product. I'm like, what's our differentiator in, in the CPQ space? And he's like, it's Cloud Connect, which is our bidirectional integration framework. And I'm in marketing. I'm like, so our differentiator is integration. Like, that's not super sexy to like bring to market. But like, now that I'm more in the sales realm, like, I'm seeing us win these deals against our competitors really because of the way that we can work with dynamic. So we can either pull the product information from Business Central, or we can start it in CPQ. And if they, for example, we're migrating from NAV to BC and all the product information lives in, CPQ, once they implement Business Central, we can push that all back in. Or vice versa. So it's bidirectional sync. It's totally like low code, no code type of integration framework too. We can connect down to the meta level of any object. And, we do also integrate with, Salesforce. Salesforce has their own CPQ product. Like, we can connect to more custom entities and endpoints in Salesforce than Salesforce CPQ can. So that's the flexibility of our integration framework. And again, it's truly our differentiator. It's bidirectional, it's low code. And then, I feel like I was going to say one other thing on that end too.
The bidirectional, as you're thinking about that, the bidirectional, I do see it as a selling point and advantage, because now a user does not need to work in two systems if they have that. I understand some individuals may have to work on CPQ only. Some individuals may have to work in Business Central only, but then you'll have those individuals that may manage products that may have to do something in both, where that way now they can live in just one of the systems and not have to spend any time either learning two systems or jumping back and forth between them and potentially missing something inadvertently because they have to manage two different systems. So I could see how that'd be a big selling point for an implementation. And it could reduce the license cost. I don't want to talk about pricing because I know it's different, but when it comes to licensing of ExperLogix, how is it licensed? Is it licensed by user, licensed by app? Okay.
Licensed by user, and just by either like admin user or sales user. So it doesn't need to be every user that's on Business Central or on C.
So it's simple.
Just anyone interacting with it.
Everything has to be easy.
It's simple. It depends on the integration platform too. So the pricing for F&O is a little bit different than it is in Business Central. Business Central has less, user requirements than finance and operations does, so on and so forth. But yeah, Business Central particularly is pretty cost productive.
No, I like
simple.
It simple, and it's important for it. Well, Miss Miranda, thank you again for taking the time to speak with us and tell us a little bit about X.
I want a rematch because I lost twice.
I know. I know.
Twice,
Good thing
maybe even
Rob's,
3
good
times,
thing
and I
Rob's
gave
not
up.
on this call because I
Are
would
you
be
going
definitely
to
talking
Orlando?
some smack to him after the way
Are
Are
he
you going to
played.
be in Orlando? Okay, so do
I
the
am.
rematch in Orlando. We can schedule it now and play now.
Got to do a rematch.
We'll bring our own setup that'll be at our kiosk, just in case
Okay.
they don't
But I'm
have
just
it at
letting-
the party this year.
Rob is not going to be in my team. I
Yeah,
shall tell
Rob-
you that because he did not.
I
help
will
me
be
at
on your
all,
team,
man.
but
I
you
did the
have
whole.
to. But we have to
You can be
do
my
it before
team.
my bedtime. That's all I'm going to say. So if you want to play, it has to be. You can stay up all night, and we'll do it early in the morning when I get up. That's fine. I get up early. It will be on the East Coast, so I can have my normal sleep schedule. But if you want to play, I will be on your team. No problem, and I do quite well. But it has to be
Perfect.
before my bedtime and after my waking time. So you guys can start early in the morning at 3 o'clock. Just stay up until I wake up. But it's done. Rematch settled.
Rematch.
Or set. October. We'll pick one of the days as it gets closer, but October in Orlando, and we should record it. But no, thank you. We do appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. You offered a wide range of valuable information, and hopefully everyone understands a little bit more about ExperLogix and CPQ. I know I learned quite a bit. If anyone would like to learn more about ExperLogix and CPQ, what's the best way to contact you to find more information, see the great things that the product does?
Yeah, I will. My email address is mpowell@experlogix.com. But if you come through as a partner to our website, those automatically get routed over to me. So, yeah.
All right,
Either way
great.
works.
Well, again, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Talk about these books as well as now. The challenge is on. You
Yes.
have, what are we in? April, May, June. You have about
Fine.
I gotta
5.5
practice.
months. Well, it's at the end of the month. So you have about 6 months now to prepare for this. Chris, we better start practicing.
Well, Christopher knows
practice.
I
I'm gonna
don't.
create a
Christopher knows I
montage.
don't need that much practice. So
She's good. I need to practice, create a montage, post it,
6
and
months,
I'm ready.
a lot can happen. If she doesn't play in 6 months, she can lose that skill. It's not like riding a bike.
Sure.
Could. But you know what? She's tall. She has like advantage. I'm this like short guy. I have to like.
Oh yeah, forget
lob
it. I
it a little
forgot because
higher.
she can just like drop it. You have to.
Yeah, slam
Yes.
dunking across the beer
Miranda, can
pong
I be on your
table,
team?
So.
Okay, settled.
Yes.
Chris,
Well, that's why we had to get Christopher involved last time as the ref. Because
Yes.
there was a little bit of reaching that was happening. So he was taking the white napkins and throwing them down on the table and calling fouls on like me or Rob.
listen. If you're
Oh,
doing a
good
normal
times.
reach and you're not leaning, I'm okay with it. Just that if your arm's long enough and it goes halfway over the table, it counts. You're on my team because I'm not losing. Again,
it's
thank
too
you very
fun.
much, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon. All right, thank you. Ciao,
Thanks,
ciao.
guys. Appreciate the opportunity.
Later.
Bye.
Thank you, Chris, for your time for another episode of In the Dynamics Corner Chair. And thank you to our guests for participating.
Thank you, Brad, for your time. It is a wonderful episode of Dynamics Corner Chair. I would also like to thank our guests for joining us. Thank you for all of our listeners tuning in as well. You can find Brad at developerlife.com. That is DVLPRLIFE.com. And you can interact with them via Twitter, DVLPRLIFE. You can also find me at matalino.io, matalino.io. And my Twitter handle is matalino16. And you can see those links down below in the show notes. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, and take care.